Hi folks, Carlton from the Farmacy Seeds Network here. I wanted to talk about plant sap analysis today. I talk a lot about building soils, regenerative agriculture, organic versus standard, organic versus certified organic, and a lot of the issues and problems that we have with the current agricultural system. A lot of the certified organic stuff doesn't require testing of the produce. It only requires certain parameters to be filled. Like, for example, you can't spray chemicals for 3 years on a piece of land and then you can get certified organic on it. And the reality is those chemicals have much longer half-lives. Anyway, I don't want to get off all into a whole bunch of other stuff right now. This video is about plant sap analysis. All that information that I was just discussing really brings me back to we need to be doing testing on our plants, on our soils, and really verify what our quality is, what our nutrition is, and verify when we have deficiencies and address them and correct them. And so that's what this video is about. I had a plant sap analysis done on these beefsteak tomatoes here. Let's see if I can show you those. I'm not used to working with the camera in reverse. Anyway, I had a plant sap analysis done. I took a plant sap sample and I sent it into Advancing Eco Agriculture, and they sent it to their lab in the Netherlands to be analyzed. And I got those plant sap analysis results back, and I want to go over those with you. But I just want to discuss a few things before we did that, and really it comes down to using good testing. You can do plant mineral assays, which is a dried plant matter test, but that doesn't yield the same results, and it isn't as accurate. So that's why we use plant sap testing. Now that said, on a scale as small as I am, I would not recommend you use plant sap testing if you're doing it for economic reasons, because John Kemp from AEA says any crop under $5,000, the plant sap analysis with corrections isn't going to be enough to compensate for that financial loss that you spent on the plant sap. So I'll just say it, the plant sap test costs about 65 bucks, so it's not an inexpensive test to do, but I wanted to do it to better understand my growing practices, how well my foliar feeds are targeted, and to adjust those foliar feeds and make them better for next year. Really, plant sap analysis tests should be done every 2 weeks, and then that gives you a way to calibrate where you were, where you are, where you're going, and whether or not what you're doing has an effect. Obviously, I don't have the budget to do this every 2 weeks. I just wanted to have a better understanding here. So I spoke with Nathan from AEA on Friday, and we went over my plant sap analysis test, and I got a lot of excellent information out of that. I'm going to do a foliar feed. I don't know if I'll get to it tonight. We're supposed to have rain coming tomorrow, so I may hold off till Tuesday for this, which is a little late. I should have done my foliar feed Friday, but I didn't get to it. It's been a crazy week. Anyway, what we're going to do now is go inside. I'll pull up that plant sap analysis test, and we'll go over it in a little more detail. I hope you find this interesting, and I hope this helps someone. Okay, so the earlier part of this video was filmed on September 1st, 2019. It is now December 4th, 2019. But we're going to take a look through the plant sap analysis results that I received back from AEA and from Nova Crop Control. Unfortunately, there was a hang-up on my sap analysis, and I didn't get it back for a little bit longer than I should have. This happens very rarely, occasionally, with Nova Crop Science, and Nathan and the people of AEA apologize profusely for it, and it is really kind of okay because, like I said, I'm not testing every 2 weeks, and so it's not quite as critical. Anyway, it's something that could happen, so be aware that it could happen, and don't take it personally if it does, if you do plant sap analysis. That said, let's get on with it. So this plant sap analysis, I guess I should explain how plant sap analysis works. We take 2 samples off of the leaves. We take a young sample and an old sample. And so when you order your plant sap analysis kit, they send you collection bags and a procedure for collecting and a way to it's crop specific, I should say, and a way to determine the young leaf from the old leaf. It's not quite what you would expect. I'm pretty intimately familiar with tomato plants and young and old leaves, and I was surprised just how subtle the differences are between old and young leaves. But anyway, so you take a whole bag sample, it's about a quart sample of young leaf, and you take about a quart sample of older leaf, about 2 weeks old. And so you send these two samples into the lab, and what they do is they extract the sap from the plant, from the leaf matter that you send. They extract that sap and they analyze the sap for its actual nutritional components. As opposed, this is different from mineral analysis, where they dry the plant matter and they burn it and they do gas chromatography on it. I believe that's how they do the dry sample matters. And so it's, once again, like anything else in science, as things evolve here, we're starting to realize that you can't just look at something outside of the living system. If you really want to understand what's going on in the living system, you really have to look at it in the system as it's functioning in the system. And obviously, because we're trying to look inside of living systems, that's very difficult to do. Fortunately for plants, we can cut off some leaves and take blood samples from them. There's a whole other thing, maybe I'll go into this at some point, about the difference between dry blood samples and live blood samples. They use something called a somatoscope to look at live blood samples, and there is a tremendous difference between those two as well. But for now, we're going to stay focused on plants and plant sap analysis. So what I'll do here is I'll put up the first part of this. I had to split this into two parts so you could see it in the video. So I got the top part of the chart and the bottom part of the chart. So we'll look at the top part first. And if you look at the chart, if you look at the lines next to the chart, that gives you an indication of where you're at. So, for example, we'll just start at the top of the chart. Total sugars. Optimum would be 0.7 to 2.1, and if you look, our current level is 0.5 and 0.3. So our sugars were low. Now that's kind of indicative. That kind of ties into the Brix meter thing. I'm not going to go into great depth in that right now because I don't want to get sidetracked. You'll notice the pH. This is a really good indicator. Plants whose plant sap pH is at 6.4 can neither be attacked by insects nor attacked by fungi and other bacteria and those sort of things. If you go above or below, those attack probabilities increase dramatically. So you notice that optimum is 6.2 to 6.6. You'll notice my current levels are 4.8 and 4.8. So that's not good. Let's see, we'll go down to EC. Actually, we'll just skip EC because that's not super important. EC, for those who don't know, is electrical conductivity. We'll look at potassium. You'll notice my potassium levels are just about where they need to be. I suppose I should mention at this point that I also had been doing foliar feeds. About 2 weeks prior to taking the plant sap analysis, I stopped foliar feeding because I did not want to I didn't want to mess up the results of the plant sap analysis. I wanted to get a real accurate baseline for what I'm doing and what my soil is actually doing and how my plants are interacting with the soil. Because that is the true value of plant sap analysis, is really, what are the plants actually doing? Alright, so my potassium levels are good, and I'm supplementing potassium in these foliar feeds. So that's a good sign. That means I'm able to target potassium pretty close. You'll notice that optimum is 3393 to 4407, and we're sitting at 4904 and 4890. I'm actually a hair heavy on potassium. However, if we go down to the next column, you see calcium. You'll notice that my calcium levels are significantly low. This is a huge factor. Calcium is a big part of the biochemical sequence. Maybe I'll stick a shot of the biochemical sequence of nutrition in plants here, right here, so you can have a better understanding of how calcium and all these other nutrients interact inside the plant in the biochemical sequence of nutrition. The biochemical sequence of nutrition is basically like you have to have one nutrient so you can build to the next nutrient and bridge to the next and bridge to the next. And so if any one of those is low, you don't have enough to bridge the whole
thing over, and so you lose parts of that cycle and therefore obviously lose efficiency tremendously. All right, we'll roll down to magnesium here. You'll notice my magnesium levels are actually a hair high, but I think we'll find out when we go over to the next chart, part 2 here, which I'll bring up now for you. You'll see that we'll look at how that interacts. We'll go on down to sodium next here. You'll notice my sodium levels. Alright, so we'll go down to sodium next here. So you notice my optimum levels for sodium would be 28 to 62. Mine are a little low at 18 and 23. On the left-hand side, what my actual levels are, those are old and new. If you look at the key in the top of the first chart, you'll see the old and new plant sap tests. So we're comparing old versus new and looking at, have we gone up, have we gone down? Basically, what direction are we going? We're going to ignore NH4 ammonium for now. It's just not, we're just not going to go into all the super complexities of plant nutrition. Probably not that well versed yet. We'll go down to nitrate though, take a look at that. You'll see the optimum would be 70 to 210. You'll notice my nitrogen levels are way high, and you'll see why as we go down this chart further. So notice my calcium levels are low, my nitrogen levels are high. So we obviously have some imbalances here. Let's see, that was NO3 nitrate, and this is N in nitrate. Should be 16 to 47. Again, they're very high, 48 and 78. We'll go down to total nitrogen now. This is there's many different types of nitrogen in plants. I'm not going to go into specific details on that at the moment. But you'll see that total nitrogen, we should be 1147 to 1552. And you'll see that we're at 1665 and 1570 respectively. So we're a little high, but not horribly high, but definitely out of range. Chloride levels should be 620 to 1230. We're in a pretty optimal range for chloride. Sulfur is a critical one, and this ties into the calcium as well as the high nitrate levels. So let's look at sulfur. Sulfur should be 1235 to 2015, and we're at 718 and 1029. We're way low on sulfur, and sulfur affects calcium and nitrogen and a lot of these enzyme and catalyst processes within the plant. Like I said, we'll go back to that in a bit. Phosphorus, let's look at phosphorus. So phosphorus should be 180 to 420, and I'm way, way, way high at 461 and 429. Let's see, silica should be 13.6 to 20.4, and I'm a little high on silica at 23.8 and 25.9. Those aren't too far off, and a little extra silica probably won't hurt you too bad. Now iron plays a very important role in the synthesis of chlorophyll. I'd have to go back and look into that further, but I remember specifically Nathan mentioning that to me, and I know I've heard that in other AEA talks. Iron is a very critical component in the synthesis of chlorophyll, so it's not actually part of the chlorophyll molecule, but it's important for creating chlorophyll within the plant. So let's look at that. 2.35 to 4.65, and my iron levels are way low at 1.55 and 1.21, horribly low. So that's not good. And that, of course, if you can't create enough chlorophyll, you can't accelerate photosynthesis. And if you can't accelerate photosynthesis, no energy is created or transmitted within the plant to other cells. So this is a critical one. Remember, the whole system relies on photosynthesis. If photosynthesis efficiency is high, everything runs fine. You have to supply all the components to make that happen, but it really comes back to whether or not photosynthesis is good. And obviously there's many reasons why photosynthesis could be up or down. And it all goes back to the trace mineral nutrition and the availability of trace minerals within the plant sap, and so on and so forth. Let's roll on down to manganese. Let's roll down to manganese, zinc, boron, copper, and molybdenum. These are very critical. I'll throw the biochemical sequence of nutrition in plants back up again here so you can see how that these interact so critically in that sequence of nutrition within plants. And then we'll go back and we'll talk about it. Manganese. Manganese was optima at 10.8 to 25. My manganese levels were 1189 and 1552. So not horribly low, but low enough that it's on the bottom end of the scale, and it really would be better to be in the medium range. Zinc, 2.1 to 4.9. You notice my zinc levels are low at 2.61 and 1.92. That definitely should be, basically my zinc levels should be almost double what they were when this test was taken. Please remember, plant sap tests are a snapshot of that specific time in the plant's life, and it can change within hours, days, etc. Let's see, we'll go on down to boron. Boron should be 4.7 to 9.3. You'll notice my boron levels are also very low at 2.85 and 3.56. And copper, 2.5 to 7.5. My copper levels are critically low at 1.12 and 0.94. And then let's go down to molybdenum, 0.25 to 0.75, and look at mine are 0.08 and 0.05. So a big part of why my plants aren't growing as healthily as they should be and as productive as they should be are these critical components here: manganese, zinc, boron, copper, and molybdenum. And please remember, all along through the summer and from the very start of the season, I've tried to ensure that these are present in and on the plant and in and on the soil in an available form, as well as appropriate biology to support that. But even with my foliar feeds, even trying and thinking that I was on target, I was off. I was still low. So this is where plant sap analysis really has its value. This is the only way to date scientifically to go back and confirm whether your foliar feeds are targeting specifically what they need to target, and if they're not, to find out what specifically you're not hitting and how to correct it. So I had a pretty good discussion with Nathan after I got my plant sap analysis test back. I think we spent close to an hour on the phone. I kind of grilled him about it. I really asked him a lot of questions, and he was really helpful and informative about it. And I have a much better idea how to correct things for next year. I may try and do a plant sap analysis test next year earlier in the season to correct it. But going back to all these pieces, let's take a look at the the biochemical sequence of nutrition in plants again, and let's discuss that. All right. So now let's look at the biochemical sequence of nutrition in plants, because this is critical and important, and it pertains directly to plant sap analysis and the synthesis of trace mineral nutrition and all nutrition in plants. So let's just go over it quick. If you look at the plant biochemical sequence, it starts with boron. So you can see already why boron and silicon and magnesium and some of these other compounds are so critical. So the whole process begins with boron. So if you don't have boron present, you can't activate silicon, which carries all other nutrients, starting with calcium, which will bind nitrogen to form amino acids, DNA, and cell division. And so this ties in specifically to why my nitrogen levels are so high. My boron levels are low, my sulfur levels are low, and my calcium levels are low. You can't really bind nitrogen without enough calcium, and you got to start that whole sequence with boron. So now you can start to see the picture of how this all comes together and why these things are so interactive with each other. So boron activates silicon, which carries all other nutrients, starting with calcium, which then binds nitrogen to form amino acids, DNA, and cell division. Then these amino acids form proteins such as chlorophyll and tag trace elements, especially magnesium, which is a big part of the chlorophyll molecule, which transfers energy via phosphorus to carbon to form sugars to go where potassium carries them. So you can see that even just being shy on boron, even if you had everything else balanced, that's a severe limiting factor in the photosynthetic process. So I just wanted to point this out and kind of help people understand a little bit how the biochemical sequence of nutrition in plants relates to this topic and how important it is to have all of the trace elements present. And I realize in this biochemical sequence of nutrition in plants, we didn't go into manganese and copper and zinc and some of these other ones, but just understand that each trace element is the basis for an enzyme or or some other chemical, electrical process in the plant. And each one, if it is deficient, that enzyme can't function. If that enzyme can't function, then many other pieces of this puzzle can't operate. It's a lot like trying to take a train down the tracks, but you haven't finished building the tracks. Well, the train's not going to go very far when the tracks end. It's going to crash. And it's the same concept here. I know that's kind of a brute force version of it, but I hope this helps people understand how important it is to have trace mineral nutrition in plants. I feel like I've been bouncing my head off the wall talking about this for a number of years, and I haven't really been able to narrow it down and explain more what I mean. So I'm hoping this video will reach people, and it'll help you understand just how much more efficiency you can have in your plants and how much more plant health you can have. Now, of course, in addition to increasing photosynthesis, all the other good things that comes with that happens. Plant secondary metabolites go up. Polyphenols, terpenes, terpenoids, flavonoids, all these medicinal plant compounds, those all go up tremendously when you get the health of the plant up and the photosynthetic engine, so to speak, up and running at full efficiency and capacity. And so it also improves yield, it improves disease and insect resistance. It just really amplifies the whole thing. And basically, if you get a plant up to true health through trace mineral nutrition and biology and making sure that plant has everything it needs as much of the time during its life cycle as you can do it, you'll have much healthier plants. You won't have to fight diseases and pests. You won't need to use pesticides, or at least you'll be able to reduce pesticide usage if you're a pesticide fan. And so all these other benefits come with it. So this is why the plant sap analysis test makes so much sense. That said, the plant sap analysis test, I think I said earlier in this video, cost me $65. It cost me another $72 to ship it to AEA, and then they shipped it to the Netherlands for the actual lab work. So all total, it was about $140 to take this plant sap test, which is why John Kemp says, you know, if your crop value is less than $5,000, doing plant sap analysis won't get you enough gain to offset, to offset through yield what you would lose in plant sap analysis testing and cost. Now, that said, even on a small scale for me, this is a tremendous thing because I really understand what's going on in my soil now. And I can address some of these things through soil amendments as well as foliar feeds. One of the things I talked about with Nathan was like, man, my calcium levels are always low in this soil. We have a tight clay soil here. And over the years and different seasons, I've added calcium sulfate to improve that. And I've seen tremendous growth improvements in areas when I've done that. And so I was asking him how to get calcium up, and he was saying that calcium sulfate is probably the best way to do that in the soil. I will share a little bit more detail on that for you for those of you who have tight clay soils. Again, I can't speak for your specific soils. You should really have your own testing done and do testing specific to your plants and to your soils and to your growing processes so that you can really calibrate yourself. But he was saying that calcium sulfate would be an excellent thing. I should probably do 3 to 4 applications throughout the growing season in the soil, starting early season, and keeping in mind that calcium sulfate takes between 30 and 45 days to become available to the plants in the soil. It takes some time for the calcium sulfate to break down and the calcium and the sulfur in that to become available to the biology in the soil and consequently to the plants. I think this pretty much covers everything I wanted to cover through this video. I hope you found this interesting and informative. I hope you'll like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, by all means, shoot them away down below. I'm glad to answer everything I can answer. And if I can't answer them, I'll certainly be willing to go ask AEA or John Kempf or someone who is more knowledgeable than me and get you the answers you're looking for. I highly recommend, if you haven't checked out Advancing Eco Agriculture's YouTube channel and their website, I highly recommend you check that out. I'll throw links below, and I'll just say it's Advancing Eco Agriculture on their YouTube channel, and their website, I believe, is advancingecoagriculture.com, I think. Anyway, these guys are cutting edge of plant science, and I am really appreciative and grateful for all their educational and knowledge tools and their support, and for all their consultations. Thank you especially to Nathan Harmon and Robin Katowski. You guys have been really supportive and beneficial for my homesteading and farming operation here. I've learned so much from you, so thank you so much, Advancing Eco Agriculture. And I look forward to hearing more from you guys in the future. And I hope that everyone watching this video has found it informative and helpful, and that you go check out these other links and run down more information so you have a better understanding of plant health also. Thanks for watching the Farmacy Seeds Network.